Welcome, everyone. Madness today on December 9th as we record another episode of The Relay Throw featuring myself and Andrew Hard. Argentina and Netherlands are playing right now in the World Cup, and it's going into overtime as we record, so that's kind of interesting. But we're going to chug along. We got a lot of content for you guys today, and I'm really excited. It's all about fall sports. Andrew, how are you feeling?
Hey, I'm feeling well. I'm away from home right now. This is not the usual setup.
Yeah.
We are in the center field room. We are live. Me and Luke Sassa
all the way on the other side of the room.
All the way on the other side of the room. This is crazy. I think this is the first time we've ever done a relay throw where two people are in the same room. This is history.
It's history in the making. First time we've ever used the center field room. Shout out Christian and Ricardo also chilling.
Yes. We have 4 people in the room. We have Christian and Ricardo watching the World Cup. How about that?
Crazy times. But you can see I'm dressed up. Wasn't by intention. Got the watch. Got the shirt. Just
don't say sorry for dressing up.
No. This is important. This is an important event. So this is on purpose. No. I'm meant to be like this.
Yeah.
But we got some fall sports to talk about. It's December and every fall sport is wrapped up by now. We got some storylines from every sport. Obviously it's kind of crazy because, when we did the spring recap, I don't think either of us were beat writers. So we didn't have our own experience to go off of, but now it's just 4 of us. So we can keep this pretty condensed. I first want to introduce, a recurring guest, probably second or third time by now, Luke. Obviously hasn't been on as many times as King Canane, but pretty close. And, Christian also in the room, so maybe that counts. But tackling the men's soccer beat this semester was Luke Sassa. Luke, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah? Watching the World Cup?
Listen, I'm not the biggest professional soccer fan, so I catch glimpses here and there, but I followed Marist soccer very closely, and that's what's important.
Yeah, that's all right. And this is a happy man. This is a man that just got Brandon Nimmo for 8 years, 162.
Oh yeah. I mean, listen, we overpaid him, but it's not my money. So
who isn't overpaying this offseason? So let's be real. We don't have to get into that.
Jacob Efremian, I got intel that he said that the RJ Barrett deal is worse than the Brandon Nimmo deal.
Wow.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. Or the Nimmo is worse? What?
No, I would agree that the RJ Barrett deal is worse than the Nimmo deal.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I would probably have to agree.
Universal agreement? Are you kidding me?
That's wild. It's crazy we all agree on something.
No, I do not agree.
Oh, Andrew doesn't agree. That sucks.
Oh my God, Christian and Ricardo are literally putting their face down on dice right now.
Wow,
they're so disappointed.
It's all right. I'll school him later. I'll school him later at trivia. I'm gonna school him later at trivia, so it doesn't matter. Oh, Andrew's gone. And he's back. But we got to introduce our second guest, brand new guest. I'm pretty sure Dylan. He's never been on. Should have got him on earlier. Great writer. Tackled the women's soccer beat as they had a season. Dylan Thompson, how are you doing today?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, happy to have you. Man, what a great start to a great podcast episode after having Freddie Coleman on. But the Marist Fall Sports was pretty interesting. Especially for the soccer, I just feel like for men's soccer, had high expectations. Did they follow through? No. Volleyball had high expectations. Did they follow through? Not really in the end. Football is football, and women's soccer is pretty much how we predicted it to be. Anyone want to start first? Andrew, you got anything you want to talk about first?
Well, this hasn't been officially announced, so I'm not going to say anything yet. but I know where Clay Fields is transferring to.
Yeah, that's really
Don't
annoying that
tease the
you know and
fans,
none of us
Andrew.
know. But
You can't have it leaked.
hey,
It
maybe
was actually. I'm going to tell the story of this.
Okay.
Tyre Harley, who's also in the transfer portal on the football team,
Mhm.
his final project for photojournalism was Clay Fields' announcement video.
Oh, what?
And we were the first to see Clay Fields' decision. 3:30, Jeffrey Golding, photojournalism.
That's
can't
how you
had to be
knew?
there.
Yeah, I was
You
in the
had to be
class
there.
as well.
Yep, Dylan was there, Christian was there, Jonathan was there, Spirio was there, Rob was there.
I get an ominous text from Andrew in the editor's chat. I know where Clay Fields is going. Jonathan knew too.
Hey, the story's already written.
It's out.
It's not out, but it's already
Do
written.
you know when it's being announced?
I have no clue.
Can you describe at least like the emotions that you felt when you heard the announcement? Like, was it surprising? Like,
I felt good for him because he explained. It was actually a very well done announcement video. You'll see it. I think he's going to release it on his Twitter. He really goes into depth of why he's transferring, and it's not disillusional. It makes total sense why he's transferring. He wants to prove to the NFL scouts that he could play at a higher level. That his game can translate from the worst conference in America to any conference in America. And
okay, worst isn't like this guy.
the PFL is the worst conference in Division I college football. Dan,
no, you're
the PFL. They were ranked 15th, dead last by the analysts in FCS conferences.
Oh my god!
And I will say I'll say this. Here's a tease. Even though this is probably going to release after Clay has made his announcement.
Oh my god!
The conference he's transferring to is top 5 in the FCS. I'll say that.
Wow. Okay. Now I'm excited. Wow. That's interesting. We might as well just talk football to start off the bat because
why not? Let's talk football.
Let's talk PFL before we talk some MAC. Would you say the Clay Field storyline is the biggest coming out of football since
by far?
Since who knows how long?
Well, I mean, for an individual player, yes. Clay Fields definitely has the most buzz from a Marist football player. As long as I've been covering the team, this is my first year as a full-time beat writer for the team, but I did cover games last year as well. No player in my time frame here has gotten the buzz that Clay has got. He had gotten scouted by many NFL teams that have come by. But as Clay said, they doubted him. They said his game may not be able to translate. There's fear about that. That's why he's transferring. But I think the fact that he's getting that attention is good for the program. I don't think, of course it's PFL, NFL attention. No one's paying attention outside of Marist, really. Let's be honest. We have an attraction to it because we're here. But it's big for the student body, I think, to know that a player has a chance to go professional. I think that improves some weird morale in the community. At least it does for me.
I see what you're saying.
But yeah, overall story, definitely Clay.
I'd have to agree. I don't know what you guys think, but first off, watching him play, he did make it on ESPN. We may or may not have pulled some strings because of ESPN. Well, I'm not going to say it. No, we were on ESPN.
PFL is on the map.
PFL is on the map. Clay Fields definitely on the map. It's cool to see some Marist football have some ties to the NFL. Since Jason Myers. But I do what's his name? Dwayne Menders did just announce his
yes. That's some other big news. He wasn't with the program this year or last year. Dwayne Menders, D1 Dwayne, wide receiver, leading receiver last year. He transferred to Duquesne. Yep. Same deal as Clay. He wanted an opportunity to show that he could play at a higher level. Duquesne is at a better conference than the PFL. And so Dwayne declared for the NFL draft after a good season at Duquesne, and hopefully he does well. I mean, hey, he played most of his college football at Marist. You have that for us.
And he's a speedy wide receiver. You know, he's got
his good hands.
Plays very well.
Last year he was like their number one like AAA receiver. Like when they lost him, I wrote about this in my preview. I thought that was gonna be the biggest loss on the team.
Yeah,
not having Clay Menders, because they have solid, and they did showcase they had solid depth at receiver, but there wasn't that one guy who put fear in defenses like Dwayne did.
Yeah, and I think that definitely shows. This was an interesting transition offensively for this team. Obviously, Brock more or less getting most of the snaps on QB. Obviously, they did platoon guys. Before we get into that offense, I was looking at the round table, and I got their PFL record right. So
yeah, but guess what? I got their overall record right.
Well, see, I think as a PFL, as an expert of the PFL, you should be able to pinpoint the PFL. Okay. So I would say I'm probably more knowledgeable at PFL football than you. Not that that's an accomplishment. No. That's not an accomplishment at all. But it says it right here in this article. You did get their overall record. Speaking of, were you surprised? And what was the biggest surprise of that came out of Marist football that wasn't Clay Fields, if any?
Biggest surprise that wasn't Clay Fields? It was. I hate to say this. It's about what I expected from Marist this season.
Yeah.
I mean, 4-7. Their offense wasn't great. Their defense, even though they gave up a lot of points at times, it's because they were on the field too much. I mean, simply put, look at time of possession for most of the games this year, and they were losing that battle mightily. The offense could not stay on the field. They couldn't sustain drives. And I guess I'm a little surprised. I thought Brock would have more of a clear hold of that number one QB spot this season. If I had to go with one storyline, I guess that would be my surprise. After this year, I'm not sure what's going to happen next year with Brock. He was their best quarterback this year, but it didn't look like he had that faith from Coach Parody, who kept subbing in quarterbacks here and there. And hey, I got to say this. Logan Bradham looked good when he was in his limited snaps. Logan Bradham looked good.
I never got to watch him play. I did see Arroyo play. I think I was there with you the first game of the season, or was it Columbia, or was it the game before?
No, you were at the Georgetown game. Luke was with me at the Columbia game.
Yeah.
That game was crazy. I mean, you want to talk about a discrepancy in the playbook of each team. I mean, Columbia's offense looked like cutting edge. And I mean, I was just watching Marist play. It just took one game of watching it to just be like, until, we have like a fundamental change in the system that we're running, I don't think anything significant is going to change unless they manage to go out and just bring in like so much talent that it could override the scheme.
Yeah. I totally agree. When I did watch that Georgetown game, their offense was miserable, and it's not like the defense shines. I mean, flashes.
Defense has their guys. They have their guys.
Yeah,
but I think their main problem was they were on the field too much. I don't want that to sound like an excuse, because you shouldn't be giving up those points, but the offense wasn't doing them any favors most of the year.
Yeah. Honestly, as looking forward, there's not much else PFL talk we need to do. This was kind of an expected season. Jim Parody has the most. He had some big accolade this year.
He got his 150th win.
150th
in 31 years of coaching Marist. So
that's I mean, obviously you put all-time wins next to your 31 years. It's something, but 31 wins as a head coach is an accomplishment in its own. Pretty.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Pretty wild. He's been there for that long. Shout out. He's from New Hampshire. So New Hampshire's on the map.
Good
I
interview.
think something important to mention about Clay, Fields, and Dwayne is like the impact of them going on to these bigger schools and like declaring for an NFL draft like that. That should help in some way with recruiting. You'd hope that they can look and see these two guys going potentially declaring for the draft, that this could show other recruits like playing in the PFL is not that bad if these two guys can go to this point.
Yeah, but for me, it's like they didn't finish here. I think that's I can't. I don't think we can underlook that.
You got to start somewhere, though.
Yeah, you got to
I-
start somewhere, but they didn't end up finishing here. So what's the point of staying? What's the point of coming over if you know you're going to end up transferring? I'm sure Clay and Dwayne didn't think they were going to transfer at some point. I mean, they had 2 magical seasons, and same with. I mean, go to basketball, Jawatuka. He had an excellent freshman season.
But if we become the school that's like the stepping stone school, then we could just embrace that and say we're like that stepping stone school, or you can come to us first and then go up.
Yeah, but school's not going to do that though.
I think it's really tough with the new transfer portal. I do see you both have good points. I do kind of like the stepping stone mantra just because of, there's no way Marist can beat a lot of these mid majors in recruiting, both in the MAC and the PFL.
So you're just going to be content with losing?
I mean, hey, if these younger recruits, like, hey, men's basketball wasn't all that bad that last season, other than their last game, right? And that was led by Jawatuka and his unbelievable performance. Hopefully we can, get as much talent onto the Marist teams in their, come up years. But the reality is, like, what changes? Like, what's going to make them stay? I think you have to embrace them for what they are. We're not going to keep recruits. I mean, did you see like entire MAC and hoops this year flip-flops?
Decimated. Yeah.
Yeah, and like look at football this year. How many recruits are in the portal? The Dion effect, and like the whole thing is wild. But it's going to be really tough for Marist to attract anyone coming in. But every now and then it is nice to get some talent that could reach stardom.
Now I will say this: Marist is going to be losing a lot of leadership next year, especially on the defensive side. The transfer portal already, not just Clay Fields, Mike Arrington's transferring, Arthur Pinckney is transferring, Tyre Harley is transferring. They're losing 3 key players in that defense. They're starters. In the case of Pinckney and Arrington, team leaders. It's going to be interesting to see how Marist defense looks next year. And they lost some depth too, like Amir Proctor going away. I didn't write much about him in my transfer portal update because there really isn't much. But with Tyre Harley going away, the loss of Amir Proctor is a big deal.
Yeah,
who's going to replace him?
How many played in 8 games, and he looks pretty good in the games he did play. Yeah, you mentioned that he didn't get targeted a lot, but
yeah,
I think just thinking about the volatility of the PFL now, and the transfer portal. Do you think? I guess kind of as a wrap up here, because we got to move on to these other sports. Do you think that because of the transfer portal that people are going to look at the PFL and will scholarship money ever be in the PFL?
I mean, I don't see.
You're no expert, but
scholarship money in it is a big deal. If the PFL had scholarship money, I think you would be getting those better recruits.
Yeah,
that's a definite.
It just seems like there's no point. It seems like with no like year of like cool down year between transferring, it just seems like there's no point.
Yeah, I don't see him putting in a scholarship institution anytime soon.
Yeah,
but it definitely would help the PFL if they did. However, I don't think they will, just because, I mean, they've been, they're not successful, but they've worked under this model for how long? 15 years now?
Right.
Longer? I mean,
something like that. Yeah.
So, I mean, if it ain't broke for them, they don't have to fix it.
That's true.
So,
yeah. All right, I think it's time to move on from Marist football. I think we beat this topic to the ground every year.
Yep.
But I do want to talk about another, pretty expected season. And that's women's soccer. Dylan, why don't you take it away and just give us a synopsis of what happened? Give us a whole case study.
Yeah, so this was Marist women's soccer second full season under Brittany Comel. They went under 500 again, and there was doubt at the end of the year if they were going to make the MAC playoffs, but they were able to sneak in on the last day. They needed like 3 other results to happen, so it was a success making the playoffs for second year in a row. But then once again, as I predicted before the year, they lost in the first round, so it was kind of underwhelming in the end.
Now, yeah, underwhelming is definitely a way to put it. And you did recently get an article out there about their inability to score and just the lack of offense for them pretty much since COVID. Want to give us an idea of that piece and like what was the point of that piece?
Yeah, so really the point of that piece was because recently Brittany Comel resigned as head coach, which was kind of surprising and not surprising because there was rumors that players were maybe not vibing with her as much. But overall, she built elite defensive teams. During her 2 years as head coach, they were an elite defensive team. They would always hold teams like under a goal or less, but they didn't have the offensive ability to compete with these top teams at the Division I level. And this year, Comel tried to address that. She went out and got fifth-year senior Nicole Colantuno from Notre Dame, and she did well. She led the team in goals this year with 5, but nobody else really stepped up. It was kind of just Colantuno and then Amanda Caldarelli who really stepped up after coming back from injury. But just throughout the year, they just couldn't get other contributions from other players.
Yeah, Caldarelli was definitely a standout. When I did those the Red Fox recap, she was almost on the scoreline every week when they did, put up some offensive numbers. Did anyone else stand out to you this year as someone that, kind of found their way out of the woodwork and is going to be a staple for this team?
Yeah, Samantha Caldarelli really was a surprising player this season because her first 2 years she didn't play. I had been covering them since my junior year here, and I never heard of her once. She was just on the bench, and then all of a sudden this year she steps up playing left back, and she comes out of nowhere getting goals and assists in her first couple games. And she's the twin sister of Amanda Caldarelli, so she's kind of always been, in her shadow. But this year she really became her own player, and she's doing well.
That's obviously good to hear. Now Comel leaves with a record of 10, 15, and 8, which, for a new coach, and considering where this program was, not terrible. And certainly, I guess, not really suspect of resigning. Is there any inklings of who they could consider for a new head coach, or haven't heard anything yet?
We haven't heard anything yet, but I would hope that they're looking for a coach who's going to bring in a more balanced approach because Comel, yes, she succeeded on the defensive side. She felt more of like, I wrote this in my story, she felt more of like a defensive coordinator in the NFL who becomes a head coach, but then his offenses are never great. Like Marist, they can't look for like a specialized coach. They need to find someone who's balanced on both sides and that can bring a balanced team to the MAC.
Do you think, Dylan, that Comel, being a former player, do you think that had any like how can I phrase this? Like Marist, she didn't have any coaching experience coming into Marist. She came in as a former professional women's soccer player.
Well, she had some coaching experience at Quick Strike FC, I don't know, it was like a program of some sort, but it was a pretty prominent program that she coached at.
Yeah, but not like college.
Yeah, not college.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
College coaching. Sorry, my bad. I should have clarified that. College coaching experience. However, do you think in their next search, they're going to look for someone maybe with more college experience and knows how to treat college players more? Because you were talking about how there were rumors of her not really getting along with some of the players on the team. Do you think that's the case for the next go around?
Yeah, I think that has to be a priority as well, because maybe the fact that she was a former player and, like formerly removed from being a player, she just brought maybe some of that intensity or some of the weight, because she was on the U.S. Women's National Team for a period of time. So maybe just bringing that environment into here wasn't the best. So I think finding someone who's had multiple years of building programs up from the ground would be important for this team and this group of girls.
Dylan, they back-to-back years kind of finished in the middle of the standings. I think they had one more draw than last year. But looking at these records, obviously Quinnipiac, the standout of the group, and Fairfield and Niagara right behind. Very early preview, and you got to still wait for the portal, who's coming in, who's coming out. But and a lot of mystery, obviously, in the coaching situation. But early prediction: where do you see them? What do you see them doing next year? Do you think this is an opportunity to grow as a team, or do you think it's going to step back and take some rebuilding?
It's probably going to take some setbacks in rebuilding, because they're going to be losing Natalie Kelchner, who was their goalkeeper for the last 4 years. She had a down year this year, but she was still very good overall the last couple of years. They're going to be losing defender Samantha Sterno. They're going to be losing Nicole Colantuno. So they're going to lose some scoring, and they're really going to be relying on the Caldarelli sisters to kind of carry them into the next year, because they're going to be that elite duo for this team. But yeah, there's definitely going to be some rebuilding for the next couple of years.
How old are the Colorelli's twins?
I think they're going to be seniors next year.
Okay. So, yeah, definitely going to need some time to figure things out as they exit, I guess a closing out tour for women's soccer. Unless anyone else has anything, I think that's a good closing point. Obviously, this team, again, going through some changes, and we're going to have to look to see what they do next year. To kind of get a better sense of where this program's going, coaching wise. Unless anyone else has any insight, I'm ready to move on. All right, let's move on. Men's soccer. I think that's a good play to go, because talking about expectations, and I was at the 2021 MAC Championships. I'm sure most of you were. And it was fun. It was, thrilling, exciting, and man, what a roller coaster of events for this team. Luke, what just give us your thoughts.
Yeah, it was obviously very interesting just over the course of the year to see how the dynamics kind of changed, as the new team settled in. Obviously, they made it to the top in 2021. Very, very exciting MAC championship finish, winning in penalties over Ryder. I mean, there was just nothing better for the program. For Vigiano, he's been coaching for 16 years now. He just finished his 16th season. At the time, it had been 15 for him, and just a great accomplishment. But, with success, you do have, its benefits and its drawbacks. The drawbacks being that some people left for what they felt were greener pastures. You lost some players who transferred out, and some new guys came in. They had about, half the team being completely new faces, and they had to try to make it work. And I think Vigiano had a quote at the end of the year that I thought was perfect, where he just said, everything that could have gone wrong this year did go wrong, and they still literally missed the MAC tournament by the most razor thin of margins. If they had just won one more game, they would have been in. And I think the most frustrating thing for this team was just their inability to close. They were 2-6 in matches that were decided by a 1-goal margin, but it was also the fact that they would blow the lead late. They allowed the tying or go-ahead goal in the final 20 minutes on 6 separate occasions, and there was half of those occasions it was the 86th minute or later. And it was just, so many games in which, they would stake themselves out to an early lead, but they just weren't able to close down the stretch. And it was just really demoralizing, I think, almost at the point where the team kind of got to a point where they would expect that to happen. Like sometimes in football, like in the NFL, you have certain teams that over the course of a season, they become known for being unable to close out games. I think of the Raiders this year as being one of those teams. And I think it perpetuates a certain type of mentality of that. Basically, there's no way to really get out of that until you start to do it. And they were really not able to close out games and get themselves out of that vicious cycle.
the Raiders seem like a perfect summary just after watching last game, especially. That was something else.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, Baker time. Anyways, I'm looking at the end of the season roundtable and a lot of mention of injuries, but also suspensions.
Yeah.
And I think you should do it justice and tell us all about it.
It was just the way that everything went down this year. It was just all like successive. I know they lost Julo to suspension, Liam Salmon, and Herman Fuentes. They all were lost to suspensions, and it would be like each week you would have somebody new missing from the lineup. It never all just like piled up at once. And then same thing with injuries as well. I think obviously the injury to Richard Morel, who at midseason. He had really broken out as a sophomore. He was their leading scorer at the time, having a serious knee injury and losing him. And then, in consecutive weeks after that, having Jared Julo, who, was huge as a junior transferring over from St. John's, but, him missing multiple games. And then, losing some of their upperclassmen from the lineup. It just felt like every week they had, a couple different guys out there who maybe, weren't out there the week before. And it was just really tough for the team to, develop that cohesiveness and that familiarity with one another with the constant lineup changes. Something that Kira had pointed out in the roundtable at the end of the year is, the team has always scored a lot on through balls, and that requires, just you need a lot of reps. You need to be out there with the guys and kind of develop that chemistry, and just slotting new people in and out of the lineup. I think really made it difficult for them to be able to, just they weren't awful offensively, but I would say that they weren't clutch. And the goals that they would allow defensively, it would also come, in bunches, and they would have lapses sometimes. And I just think that, they were really undermined by the lack of stability on the field.
Wow. Yeah, you painted the picture pretty well. Um, it's really frustrating for a team to have suspensions and then also awful injuries that set back this team a ton. And like, what is there to build? After all of that, what can you build off? Now again, I'm looking at the table, and they did miss obviously by the one win in that last week. So give us an idea. Let's say they did move on and they did enter the first round of the MAC tournament. Do you think they would have been successful, or was this a roller coaster off the rails?
They need a fresh start. Like, they need to have an off season and a fresh start. I just think that I think everything went wrong that could have possibly went wrong, and they still only missed by one game. They were like historically unclutched. They had awful collapses. I think talking about before, all their collapses in the final 20 minutes, that doesn't even count the game where they allowed the game tying own goal in the 61st minute to Ryder to blow that game too. They blew so many games. I just think, it's almost like I think of like a snowball rolling down a hill. Once you start to kind of just get that negative mojo, and kind of like that, it gets embedded in the subconscious almost of, uh-oh, we're going to blow this game again, just like we blew those other 5 games. And so I think just a fresh start, and to make an NFL comparison again, I mean, I feel like last year the Minnesota Vikings were a team that, they would blow all of their games. And then they had a fresh start. They kind of readjusted over the offseason. Now they finish out and they win all these close games this year. They have one of the best records in the league. And I really do think that, they're going to be positioned better than a lot of teams that would have the type of season that they did, in that, first off, Matt Vigiano should be trusted. He is a phenomenal head coach. They've only had 2 losing seasons since 2014. He's built this program from the ground up. And I think I look at a team like Quinnipiac last year, had an uncharacteristic season where they finished at the bottom of the standings. And within 1 year, they shot right back up to the top. So I really don't see any reason why Marist can't do the same if they're able to get Morel back healthy. You have Julo back for his senior year. And you can just, get those 2 guys on the field, with everybody else, and kind of develop some more consistency on offense. I think that they could definitely take the next step. it is going to be challenging losing Sam Illen in goal. I mean, he's been incredible for the program for a long time. Obviously the season he had in 2021 was incredible. But they'll have some internal options potentially, or they could look to the transfer portal, and you have to just hope that they can find somebody who could step in and maybe not quite replace him, but just do an adequate job and allow the team to stay in games. It's going to be definitely very interesting to look at for sure.
I have a hard-hitting question for Luke. How many times did Viggiano not wear shorts this year?
Zero times did he not wear shorts. There were sometimes I would sit up there in the booth with Kira or whoever else, and we would just be pointing down at the field laughing because it was literally like 20 degrees, and I had like 3 layers on, and I'm freezing and shivering, and there he is in shorts. But yeah, no, he's a very fiery coach. He's very intense for sure. It definitely came across some of the interviews. So I have a feeling he didn't really need shorts. He probably was pretty warm down there on the field, running back and forth and motivating his players.
All right, that's Luke. Thank you so much for the synopsis.
Of course,
that was quite the roller coaster of emotions. I didn't really know the specifics of the season, but I think a snowball that keeps balling up is a perfect way to describe it. I do want to move on though, as this Argentina-Netherlands game goes into pens. No, we got it. We're on a time crunch anyway. I think we should probably transition into volleyball, which I had the pleasure of being a first-time writer for. So hit me with any questions you got, guys.
Yeah. So Dan, obviously, I'm just going to get right down to the main point. They disappointed. They disappointed against Ryder. What happened?
Man.
What happened?
What happened? I had, first off, it was a pleasure writing my first beat. A lot of fun, but I can't get over that. Anyway, I am in the process of writing an article right now, and out of left field, I would say. I had a sit down with Coach Byron, and we talked about the Ryder loss. I was in the Center of SportsCom watching that, and it was shocking. It was miserable, and it did not feel like them at all. Byron, the biggest thing he said is that Ryder just was unstoppable. They played the best game they've ever played. And he had stats to back it up, to be fair. It wasn't a complete Marist crumble. It was Ryder did have a lot of overperformance in this game. A lot of it was their hitting percentage. They had no players that hit under 350, which is unbelievable. And they had 2 players that hit over 500. So they had 2 players that are getting kills on over half of their attempts, which is unheard of. It's uncanny. And once, kind of what Luke said with the snowball effect, once they get momentum, it's really hard to bounce back from one set when you had you had an expectation to win the first set strong, maybe go 4 or 5 sets and then finish this out strong. Ryder's a good team. They are not a 7th seed by any means. Maybe a 5 or 6, but there's no reason why this Marist team couldn't win, other than the fact that they couldn't get any of their outside attackers on point. Marist's strength was Jordan Newblatt and Sasha Vandermurray and Gabby Heller, their outside attack, and they found a way to crumble. And no one really shined on the Marist side. And both the factors of Ryder being unbelievable and Marist just not being able to collect like they had all season, where they play point by point, they let it get to them. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just looking over like their match by match statistics throughout the year. Looking at the kills specifically, I see 70. I see just before this game, a stretch of 50, 70, 56, 61, 58, 58, 56, 61 kills. Then they kind of fall apart in their last 7 games, starting with that game against Ryder back in McCann.
Yeah.
And they end up with 32 kills in their final performance.
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to?
So let me be clear, and sorry to cut you off, but I was pretty on point with my prediction. This is a team that didn't lose anyone. They lost Gabby Hombauer. I think that's how you say her name. They kept all their team together. They got in some new transfers. The biggest one being Gabby Heller, graduate student from Washington State. She was unbelievable. As I talk about in most of my articles, a big three of attackers. You have Jordan Newblatt, who put up the kill record last year for Marist. I think she had 36 in one game, which is incredible. Then on the right, you have Sasha Vandermeer, who was injured half of last season, and she is MAC first team. That is a tough penalty for wow. Anyway, MAC first team, and then you have Gabby Heller. So you have three attackers who are in top 10 kills in the entire MAC, which is unbelievable. The thing that happened is obviously if a team is playing better, you're going to get less kills. So that's why the stat sheets kind of look like that. Obviously, if you're getting less points, that's just kind of how it goes. But Ryder found a way to put the ball in the center court. Instead of trying to be crafty with it and playing on the corners, they challenged Marist. They challenged the back court. They challenged the middles to defend the ball. Like, hey, we're going to give you this ball to hit. See what happens. Marist, on the other hand, who relies on their craftiness and skill players, those attackers, they were way too crafty with it. They tried hitting on the sides, the corners, and when you're down by that many points, 10 points, you shouldn't be crafty. You should be challenging the defense of the other team. They continued to try to be crafty, didn't play out in their favor, and that's why this is so flip-flopped. They just did not have their finesse.
I hate to ask this question. Do you think they underlooked their competition in this case?
And I it's really hard for me to say. I think I've been leaning towards yes, because they played a game midway through. They played Ryder midway through the season at Ryder. They lost the first two sets, and for me watching from home, I was like, whoa, like this is the first true roadblock that isn't Fairfield. Fairfield is unequivocally the best team in the conference, even though Quinnipiac won. And then they came back and won 3. And the fact that they can bring that to Ryder in the playoffs, it shows volumes. And it really doesn't, it's not a fair assessment of how they play. And I think they did undervalue them. I don't think they thought they were going to use that many attackers. I think they had 5 players with 8 kills, which is, again, insane. Whereas Marist really only uses the 3. So, yeah, I think they did underlook their opponents, and it really showed.
They started out with now let's go back to the regular season. They had a great regular season. They were the second seed in the MAC. You were loving it. The fans were loving it. They began the season with a tough non-conference schedule. And I like a team that has a tough non-conference schedule to start. I think it preps the team well going to conference play, which will be easier. And for Marist, I mean, Fairfield is a daunting task, no matter what. So that was gonna be tough. But they I don't want to say dominated, but they did very well against the rest of the MAC. How would you assess how Coach Byron prepares his team for MAC play?
I'm really happy you brought that up, because in this conversation I had with Byron, talking about what's next for this team. What do you do? How do you prep for next season? Because obviously one playoff loss, it's hard to prep off that. But he did mention that he really loved how tough their non-conference schedule was. Playing Boston College, playing all these tough ACC teams. But those teams aren't even top 50. This year, Byron alluded to me that they're going to play a top 10 team. He couldn't say what, but he said they're going to try to match up against a top 10 team. Argentina wins, I think. Yeah, they do. But playing a top 5 team in volleyball is unbelievable. They obviously they did lose against all these tough non-conference teams, but you look at how well they played regardless. Sasha Vandenberg led the MAC in kills in the preseason, and I then continued on and I think was either led the MAC in kills or was second. I'm pretty sure she led the MAC in kills for the whole year. I love what they're doing for that and the prep. They really matched up well and played just a clean regular season. They were always composed. They kept it clean and really just was, they would play it point by point, and that's something Byron expressed to me the whole year. They take each set, they play point by point. But they had a lot of maturity. So I think with maturity comes like knowing your opponents. For example, Morgan Owens and McKinley Fox, the two team captains who are leaving next year. Morgan Owens, a 5-year captain, only 5-year captain in Marist athletics history, and McKinley, 4-year setter, who was second or third in sets this year. So with the experience and playing those tough teams, that culminates to a great prep. And Byron did talk to me about what he's looking for in the transfer portal as far as replacements. He wants size. I think he mentioned something about getting players over 6 feet, which would be great. Sacrificing a little bit of athletic ability for pure size. So I think all of that is shows how he preps this team, and they're really looking good going into next season too, despite losing those older veterans. So honestly, the prep work is there. It's about finishing in the playoffs.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because it seems like with every sport we've talked about to this point, everyone's losing someone big, whether it's women's soccer. Dylan, is Colantano done with this 5th year? Was that her last year of eligibility, or does she have
I
one
believe
more?
so, yeah.
So Colantano's done. Sam Allen's done with men's soccer. That's a big deal at goalkeeper.
Huge, yeah.
Football, we talked about everyone who's gone. Volleyball still has their core nucleus, I think. And when I watch volleyball, I think of Sasha. I think of Jordan Newblatt.
Mm-hmm.
And them returning is a big deal, I think. I think that's a big deal for them.
It is a big deal, and I have some more info to break. Byron did tell me that they intend on exercising their 5th years at Marist. Nothing official. What?
No, go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, nothing official. He said they plan on it, so who knows what could happen between this year and next year. But we got 2 more years of Newblatt and Vandenberg at the helm. What that means is the offense is going to be there. It's about how you recruit everyone else, how you culminate everyone else into this roster. You're losing Gabrielle Heller, a graduate student, but something else Byron brought to me is that getting graduate transfers is kind of a new concept, and it can only happen for a few more years, obviously, with the COVID eligibility. He says they are attractive for graduate students with their strong record. Obviously, the playoff loss doesn't help, but when you do bring in a grad student who did succeed, that's going to attract a lot of fans. Not fans. It's going to attract a lot of people in the portal. And yeah, I think keeping Jordan and Sasha is going to really help. You're losing captains, but you're gaining 2 captains in Sasha and Jordan, who are the captains for next year. Also an announcement. You're gaining those as you're kind of not really picking up. You're picking up where you left off. So I think having those 2 is going to be huge. It's the precedent for the program, and it's good to have an identity. I think having identity in this conference and in any college sport is really important, and having an identity of good players, pretty sweet.
All right. I think that's about it. Anyone have anything else? Dan, you have any closing comments for volleyball?
Yeah, I do. I would have loved to see them play better in Disney. But that game aside, they played well, and I only positive things going forward. Hopefully, you do have to take into account though that this is the 2nd straight first round loss. So, mixed emotion, but for sure positive.
Were you jealous that people like Christian DeBlock and Jonathan Kinane are able to go down to Atlantic City? You can't go down to Disney World.
What would I be doing in Disney by myself? I'm trying to think. Like I maybe like I don't know what's like you go to the beach maybe or like
I mean the Blizzard Beach.
I
What is
think
that?
Disney's like an hour inland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, that's not gonna.
I guess I
work.
wouldn't have any transportation. I'd hey, if I didn't have to pay for a day at Disney, I'd go.
You'd hang out with Mickey.
I'd hang out. Yeah, I'd be around. Maybe me.
There's
and
some
Byron
great
would.
food in Epcot. It's delicious.
That's true.
You're
Me
with
and Byron.
Showcase.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm a little jealous, especially with Ricardo and Jonathan going abroad. Them swine. Can't believe that.
Oh wow, you're glad Ricardo didn't hear that.
Take me
Where'd he
out.
go?
Did you just suspend me?
I think I accidentally tapped him. I did not mean that.
Did I just get suspended
Oh,
for
you
a
didn't
second?
you did not get suspended.
Yeah.
You did not
No,
get
shout out
suspended.
Ricardo. I love him. And same with Jonathan, even though he's, organizing those play dates and whatnot. Hey,
Damn,
oh.
they're gonna see this.
No, it's
They're
fine.
gonna see this.
Do
It's
you
gonna
think
be
they
on-
actually watch?
Yeah, they don't actually watch. You're right. You're right.
Exactly. I think that's pretty much it. Andrew, thanks for staying a little later than you could. And Dylan and Luke, thanks for hanging out. Obviously, a lot to look forward to, and obviously Luke will be hopefully writing for this team next year.
Oh, I plan on it.
But
They let me.
we appreciate the great journalism and always giving us something to talk about. So thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank you
having
guys
me.
for having us.
Anytime. Andrew, any final thoughts?
I don't have any final thoughts. Hey, we're gonna head into winter break. We're finals week's next week. I wish you all luck on your final exams.
Yeah. Messi's the GOAT. They did kind of choke. I mean, like, the Dutch are so good at counterattack, but
Hey, don't get me started in the Dutch after the U.S. game.
yeah, we
get me
don't have
started.
to talk about that. Yeah, it's not called soccer. All right, that's it from us. Thanks, everyone. Stay tuned for projects coming up. I got an article coming out in the next few days, but these guys will be writing all year. So we appreciate it, and happy holidays from the Relay Throw. Peace out, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.